We're back then today with another beginner's guide video from Marvel Future Revolution. In this video we'll run over the best specialisations for each of the 8 different heroes that are available at launch for the game. Now just some information on specialisations quickly if you are very new to the game. So these are endgame hero specific buffs that can help complement or even define your build. You unlock these at level 70, you can equip 4 at a time. The currency for them comes from raids. Now you get more currency the higher raid difficulty you're actually doing, so you want to work your way up to the ultimate raid difficulty as soon as you can. In regards to your raids, I would say these are the best place to actually spend your excess crystals you have for daily resets, so you can run more raids and get currency for the specialisations quicker. They really are that powerful that it is worthwhile doing that. So as mentioned anyway, we're going to cover each of the 8 different heroes and the best specialisations for them. So let's jump in and we'll start off with Black Widow first. Before we can actually talk about the specialisations, we need some context in the actual hero, where their strengths lie, so you know why I'm recommending specialisations. So with Black Widow, her strengths without a doubt lie on the burst damage side of things. She has a skill called Sniper Shot and she can absolutely melt enemies with it. This applies to PvE and PvP, but in PvP particularly she is exceptionally strong due to this ability, so this is what we'll really be building around. Now when we do go in and actually show off the specialisations, in-game UI is a bit of a mess to go through quickly, so I've actually made some infographics to make it a lot easier to show everything in one screen here. So let's jump over to them now. With the specialisations, as mentioned, you can only equip 4 at the time. She has a lot more than that could be really good on a burst damage setup, so I'll run over all the ones that I would really recommend, and then from there it's down to you to choose which exact ones you want to go for. So in the first 3, the bottom 2 are really good. You've got Receiving Intel, increases damage dealt to targets with 50% hit points or below by 25%. You have Sharp Mind, increases PvP damage by 29% for 10 seconds when using a close quarters combat class skill. That's got a cooldown of 15 seconds, so that's a 66% uptime on that. Of course you only go for that if you're really focusing in on the PvP side of things. If you are, it is essential. Moving on to the next 3, I would actually say options 2, 3 and 4 are all worthwhile going for on her. So you've got Subdue, increases damage dealt to immobile or debuff targets by 30%. It's very easy to apply debuffs, so you apply a debuff, follow up with your Sniper Shot and you're getting an additional 30% on it. To get your Sniper Shot back quicker, you have Improvising, so this decreases remaining cooldown of all skills by 2 seconds when using an Espionage Devices class skill. That's amazing as well. And then finishing up this tree, Disguise Tactics, vanishes for 2 seconds and recover by 30% of max hit point upon sustaining fatal damage. Cooldown of 5 minutes. This will work in just about all the modes apart from Spec Ops and potentially a Mega War. It most definitely works in Dimensional Duel. That's your 1v1 PvP, so having a revive in that is exceptionally powerful. Finishing up here for Black Widow, we've got the firearms tree. I would recommend specs 2 and 4. So number 2 is Operation Breakthrough, increases critical damage by 27.5% upon equipping 2 deadly aim class skills. And then the final one is Custom Attacks, increases damage dealt to a single target by 21%. So that is 7 in total. You can only equip 4, so it's down to you which ones you go for, but those 7 are definitely worth the investment. The next hero we look at here is Captain America. He is a character that can be played as a brawler or a tank. He's actually great at both of the roles, or you can do a hybrid mix of both of them. He has a unique mechanic called the Vibration Gauge, where he can use something called Vibration Absorption skills to actually absorb damage, and then he uses Vibration Release to release that back on the enemy. So that will be relevant when we look at the specialisations. With Cap having 2 very distinct builds, that's your tank or your brawler, I'll actually run over setups for each of these different builds. So if you want to lean into tank, this is the specs that you would aim for first. So you've got the tactics tree. The third one down is Passion. This one absorbs 3% of damage dealt to enemies' hit points. That's absolutely incredible for survivability, and to be honest, I would use this with the brawler setup as well. Moving on to the combat tree, you've got Vanguard. Converts 20% of defense into attack, so that's amazing as well. Now when it says it converts, just to confirm, it won't take away from your defense, it will only add into your attack and your defense will stay as it is. It's not taking anything away from that, so this is amazing. And then finally you've got the shield tree and charisma, decreases damage received from nearby targets by a flat 15%, which is a huge amount as well. So that's the tank setup. If you want to run a brawler setup on them, then I would recommend leaning into the vibration gauge and actually using that. So you would use specs 1 and 3 in the first tree, so that's regroup, giving you a 50% chance to absorb additional 20% of vibration gauge upon using a shield absorption class skill, so you can use vibration release even quicker. You've then got passion. Once again, I mentioned you would use that on your tank or brawler setup. And then in regards to the combat tree, the bottom 3 ones would be great on a brawler build. You've got bravery, increases damage of the first skill used within 6 seconds after using a hand-to-hand class skill by 30%. Line that up with one of your vibration release skills and you'll get a huge amount of damage on it. You already get a 30% buff as it is, so this will take it up to 60% additional damage. You then get dominator, increases hand-to-hand class skill damage by 20%. And then you've got spot weakness, increases damage dealt to bleeding targets by 30% as well. Obviously that one's a bit situational, you will need to be using a skill that applies bleed in the first instance there. But that's Captain America. Let's check out the next character. The next hero we have then is Captain Marvel. She's a hybrid style hero, so she's got a mixture of both ranged and melee moves. The two setups I'll talk about in regards to specializations, one is leaning into a movement style build where you can use your dodge as often as possible and have a huge amount of survivability due to the iframes and that. And the second one is a setup where you try and get as high uptime on your ultimate as you can actually get. Your ultimate offers an additional 50% damage bonus and it also offers full crowd control immunity as well. If you can get 100% uptime in that, that really is pretty incredible. Now let's check out the specializations. The first setup we'll look at here then would be the one where you're aiming for the 100% uptime on your ultimate. I'm not a whale myself, I've only spent a tiny amount of money in the game and I'm actually close to getting this, so I think with enough investment you would be able to do this. But looking at the first tree, photon energy, you would go for energy enhancement. So this one increases attack by 20% when the battle lasts for 6 seconds. On the next tree, you have Photon Field Enhancement. This one increases duration of self-granted buffs by 35%. That would take the buff on your ultimate from 20 seconds up to 27 seconds when you've maxed it out, so really helping you get that 100% uptime. I would also recommend Battle Awakening. I would recommend this in both the setups. So this one, when critically damaged, become invincible for 2 seconds and restore 35% of full hit point, and the cooldown is 5 minutes. And as mentioned on, I think it was Black Widow that actually had this previously, this will work on all your modes apart from Spec Ops and Omega War, so it'll work in your Dimensional Duel. Now the final tree, I would recommend the third one down, Energy Conversion, increases ultimate skill gauge recovery by 50% when hit points is 50% or higher. This also affects an ability she's got where she jumps up and crashes down and it increases a set amount of her ultimate skill gauge. This will go up by 50% if you max this out as well, so it really is amazing. For the movement setup here, I would recommend Specialisations 2, 3 and 4 in the middle skill tree. So the first one is Battle Awakening. We mentioned that when we talked about the ult a moment ago and why that's so good. The next two synergize so well. So you have Photon Absorption, recovers dodge gauge by 40% when using a light speed movement class skill, and then you have Dodge Prediction, which decreases light speed movement class skills cooldown by 20% when using a dodge skill with a cooldown of 6 seconds. So essentially, when you use a dodge, you'll get your light speed movement class skills back quicker, and then when you use your light speed movement class skill, you'll get your dodge back quicker as well. So you can be zooming all over the screen with this setup. So that's Captain Marvel anyway. Let's check out the next hero. So we have Doctor Strange up next. He's probably the most diverse hero in the roster in regards to what he is able to do. He really does have a lot going on in his kit. If you want, you can run him as a pure damage dealer, you can run him as a build that's got cooldown decrease and it's all about spamming your abilities, or you can even run him as a support style tank setup as well. But let's check out the specializations. For Doctor Strange then, the recommendations will be based on two different setups you can run with him. The first one is your pure damage setup. If you want to run pure damage, you use your Mystic Art skills. So that's the first tree. The ones I would say are definitely worth going for are Will of the Destroyer, increase attack by 25%, and your skills will take 15% longer to come round, which seems a fair amount, but he does have various parts of his kit where he can actually counter that. And then the bottom specialisation, Cruel Choice. This one increases Mystic Art's class skill damage by by 20%, so that is the damage setup, the ones you really want to make a beeline for. If you want to play the cooldown decrease build, which is actually a lot of fun, for this one it's all about the time manipulation tree. So you've got reverberation, decreases cooldown of illusion magic class skills by 25% upon equipping free illusion magic class skills, and then you've also got force field, it decreases remaining cooldown of all skills by 25% when using an illusion magic class skill. I'm not recommending the one above it, Waves of Despair, which looks really good. It increases max cooldown decrease by 13.5%. The way that these work in game, if it says max cooldown as opposed to just cooldown, what it means is you'll only get that bonus if you actually hit the hard cap. I'm not sure what the hard cap on cooldown decrease is, but let's just say it was 75%. What would happen is if you spec'd into this at 50%, you wouldn't get the bonus on it. You would need to be at 75% if you spec'd into it. And let's do some quick math here. And if you filled it out at 75%, it would go up to 88.5. But this is only for whales who are able to hit the hard cap on stats. But let's check out the next hero now. Iron Man then is another hybrid character with a mix of melee and ranged attacks. The two strongest setups on him, you've got one that's all around doing debuffs and then you can apply additional damage via those debuffs, and then you've got one that's around using his Jarvis class skills where you can actually buff yourself and you can also call in some Iron Legion summons to help fight alongside you. So let's check out the specializations for him. The first setup we'll talk about here then will be your debuff one. So in this one, for your first tree armor enhance, I would recommend specializations 2 and 3. So that's electric current, increases duration of debuff dealt to enemy by 40%, and then artificial analysis, increases damage dealt to supervillains by 30% for 8 seconds when using a weapon cartridge's class skill. Cooldown of 15 seconds. You will be using weapon cartridge skills if you're running a debuff build, so that's why that works really nice. We then have overclock in the middle tree, increases damage by 30% and stamina consumption by 30% when using attack skills. You may need to get stamina recovery in your kit, but to gain an additional 30% is really pretty amazing. It's worthwhile the trade-off on this. And then for the final tree, you've got weakness analysis down at the bottom. So it increases damage dealt to bleeding or burn targets by 30%. That ties in with the debuffs that you're actually adding there, so you can do a huge amount of damage with this setup. If you were looking to run the buff and summon setup, I would recommend just 2 specializations. Firstly, you've got overclock again, increasing the damage by 30% and stamina consumption by 30%. That's really locked in regardless of the build. And then you've got the second one down here, algorithm improvement, decreases skill cooldown by 25% for 10 seconds when using a Jarvis class skill. Cooldown 20 seconds. Your Jarvis class skill is your self buff and also calling in the summons as well. But that's Iron Man. Let's jump on to the next hero. Next up here we have Spider-Man, a character that when the game first came out everyone believed he was actually really weak, but it turns out he's one of the strongest characters in the game. His kit is all around dodging and the huge amount of crowd control he puts out, so that's what the specializations will be about as well. Spidey then I would say is some of the best specializations in the game, and the ones that I would say are definitely locked in almost regardless of build are Green Goblin's Madness. Total damage goes up by 28.5%, which is a huge amount. Defense drops by 18.8, but Spidey doesn't use defense for survivability, he uses dodge, so you're not really losing anything there. You've then got Electro's agility, converts 40% of dodge rate into damage. It's very similar to what Cap had with the defense getting converted into damage. And then in the middle tree you've got Great Responsibility. This is another one of these revive skills you can get with a cooldown of 5 minutes, so these ones are all really great. If you do want to lean exceptionally hard into a crowd control cocoon style build on them, then I would recommend the entire full weapon tree at the right hand side. So you've got increased duration of debuffs by 30%, you've got 35% chance to stack web by 1 upon applying web effects, so you're essentially doubling what you're adding. You've got increased damage dealt to cocoon targets by 40%, just bear in mind you can't cocoon bosses, this will only be relevant on your regular mobs. And then finally you've got increases debuff accuracy by 10% for each web shooter's class skill equipped, so it's less likely if the enemy you're going up against has high debuff resistance, he would be able to actually resist your debuffs. But that's Spidey. Let's jump on to the next character. So the next character we have here is Star-Lord, a character that he's probably the least popular hero because he is exceptionally gear intensive, but once you actually start to get the gear on him, he can do really well. So he's a character that's more geared towards spenders in the game. If you're someone that's going free to play, you're really going to struggle a bit with Star-Lord. But let's look at the specializations for him. With Star-Lord then I would say he's got two different setups. Firstly you've got your PvE setup, which is all about the flame element, and then you've got your PvP setup, which is all about chill. Now for flame I would recommend the bottom 3 specialisations in the first tree. So Grand Finale, this one here, increased damage dealt to targets with 50% hit point or below by 25%. Jet Boot's modification increases damage of the first skill used within 6 seconds after using a dodge skill by 32.5%. That's obviously for players that are playing more actively rather than just using auto, because your character won't dodge when you just got them in auto. And then the bottom one is Tolerance Decrease, increases all type damage by 15%. Moving on to the final tree here, and this is absolutely amazing. You've got Rapid Fire Spray, so decreases remaining cooldown by 50% once every 5 times a skill is used. You would mix this alongside some skills with lower cooldowns and ones with higher cooldowns, and then you can pull the cooldown of the higher cooldown ones way down there. I probably said cooldown too many times there. For the chill PvP setup, I would recommend Specialisations 2 and 4 in the first tree. It's Grand Finale, increases damage dealt to targets once again, and then you've got your increases all type damage. For the next tree, I would recommend the top 2. I'm not 100% sure on the top one, and I've not done any testing on the damage, but it sounds like it would be fun to make your opponent panic in PvP when you have this. So this one creates a chill area to deal damage equal to 22.5% of attack per second in target's location for 5 seconds upon landing a chill shot class skill. Cooldown of 12 seconds on that. And then the next one we've got here, let's see, it would be Painful Wound, 45% chance to stack chill by 1 upon applying chill, so it's more likely you can actually freeze your enemy. And then finally I would go for Rapid Fire Spray again, decreases remaining cooldown by 50% once every 5 times a skill is used. So that's Star-Lord. Let's jump on to the final hero now. So the final hero that we look at here then is Storm. She's an AoE crowd control caster. I think it's almost universally agreed that the best setup to run with her is the lightning setup, because you've got your crowd control, but you've got a real nice amount of damage you can do with it as well. So that's the specialisations that we'll really be focusing on. So we're actually finishing up with a really simple setup here. You can see that Storm is Ice, Lightning and Wind. I mentioned that Lightning is the setup most people seem to be running, so this is the one I would recommend. I would recommend all 4 of the specialisations here because you're focusing on Lightning in the Lightning tree, of course. But you get Rain Ritual, increases shock damage by 5% for each equipped Lightning Cloud class skill. You've got Thunderbolt, 50% chance to stack shock by 1 upon applying shock. Shock reduces the enemy's damage by 25%, which is a real nice amount. You've got Lightning Rod, this one's great, creates Chain Lightning that spreads to up to 3 enemies to deal damage equal to 135% of attack when attacking. That's got a cooldown of 8 seconds. And then finally you get Rainy Season, increases all skill damage dealt to enemies by 30% and then acquired stamina by 30%. So you want to run your stamina recovery setup when you're actually running this. So that is a quick overview of all the different specialisations that I would recommend for the 8 different launch heroes for Marvel Future Revolution. I have a ton of other beginners guides on the channel, so if this has been helpful, firstly take the time to hit a like, share and subscribe, and then secondly check out those other videos. But as always, thanks for tuning in for this, stay safe, I'll see you all again soon.